Legacies. They're built in the moments that define you. The moments that determine whether your name will be mentioned among the game's elite. And what you do in those moments decides whether greatness is something that you can achieve, or is it something that simply passes you by. For Dirk Nowitzki, the journey towards greatness started off with simple beginnings.
At the beginning, I didn't know what to expect, I came here as a 20-year-old kid, basically, right out of Germany, didn't play college.
He tirelessly and continuously worked towards improving his game and becoming one of the best players in the NBA. Only to be completely written off after repeated playoff failures.
The Miami Heat are champions of the basketball world!
But just when we thought that Dirk's legacy was about to be reduced to a footnote in NBA history, he would rise up and do what so many of us thought was impossible. Entering the 2010-2011 NBA season, the Mavs had won just one playoff series in the last 4 years. Dirk was entering his 13th season in the NBA and was now 32 years old. And with father time around the corner for Dirk himself, he had the task of leading one of the oldest teams in the NBA. 7 players in their core rotation had played more than 10 seasons in the NBA. Jason Kidd was now 37 years old and was well past his prime. Sean Marion was 32. Peja Stojakovic was now 33. Jason Terry was 33, and he was perhaps the only man on the planet that believed the Mavs actually had a chance to win. Before the season even started, the Jet had the Larry O'Brien trophy tattooed on his right bicep. And to address years of criticism for being too soft in the playoffs, the Mavs brought in Tyson Chandler, who would bring in some much-needed toughness at both ends of the floor. So as the season got underway, the Mavs would get off to a flying start. During the stretch between November and December, they would win 18 out of 19 games. But in spite of having a deep squad, their dependency on Dirk was more obvious than ever. On the 27th of December in a game against the Thunder, Dirk would go down with an injury. The Mavs would then go on and lose 9 out of the next 11 games while Dirk recovered. And to make matters worse, they would also lose Caron Butler, their second highest scorer for the remainder of this season. But as soon as Dirk came back from injury, the Mavs would start to roll. They would go on an incredible run, winning 19 of their next 21 games, finishing the season strong with a record of 57-25 to be the 3rd seed in the West. And just to show how consistent the Mavs have been in the regular season, this was their 11th consecutive 50-win year. Dirk would finish the year averaging 23 points and 7 rebounds on 52% shooting. But all the questions about Dirk and the Mavs would continue to linger unless they found a way to win when it truly mattered. Dirk would arrive in Dallas in 1998 as a young 20-year-old from Würzburg, Germany. But the 1998-99 season would begin with a lockout, and that meant that Dirk had very little time to adjust to the NBA's speed, physicality, and also to adjust to a new country and culture. Dirk would struggle massively in his first season, averaging just 8.2 points per game on 40% shooting. Dirk would actually consider going back to Germany at the end of the season, but it was Dirk's mentor, Holger Geschwindner, who would encourage Dirk to stay on. Holger was the former captain of the German basketball team, and he was the first man to spot Dirk's potential. And to say that Holger had some strange training methods would be a massive understatement, whether it involved playing the guitar to strengthen his fingers or learning ballet to improve his balance and footwork. Holger's methods were anything but conventional. He believed that basketball was a combination of art and science, and he even came up with a formula to perfect Dirk's jump shot, which is probably what led to that high release which made Dirk so impossible to guard. So Dirk and Holger would go to work that summer and the results would be immediate. Dirk would come back in his second season as a completely different player, finishing as a runner-up for the Most Improved Player award. But it was in his third season that both Dirk and the Mavs would reach new heights. Dirk would form a formidable trio alongside Michael Finley and Steve Nash, leading Dallas to their first ever playoff berth since 1990. The Mavs would continue to improve year on year, becoming one of the elite regular season teams in the entire league. And it was no coincidence that Dallas's rise as a contender went hand in hand with Dirk's rise as a star player in the league. In 2001, Dirk would make the first of 12 consecutive All-NBA team selections, and just a year later in 2002, he would make the first of 11 consecutive All-Star appearances. And that's particularly impressive if you think about the fact that Dirk entered the NBA during the golden age of power forwards and was consistently competing with the likes of Tim Duncan, KG, and Chris Webber in the same conference. The Mavs would reach the conference semis in both 2001 and 2002. But in 2003, Dirk would truly elevate his status, turning in several clutch performances during a magical run for the Mavs in the playoffs. In the deciding Game 7 of the first round against Portland, Dirk would drop 31 points and grab 11 rebounds to lead the Mavs into the conference semis. And then again, in the next round, in the deciding Game 7 against the Kings, Dirk would have a monstrous double-double, scoring 30 points and grabbing 19 rebounds to lead the Mavs into the conference finals. But in Game 3 against the Spurs, disaster struck. Dirk would go down with a knee injury late in the third quarter after a collision, and that would end Dirk's season. The Mavs, of course, did not stand a chance without Dirk and would get eliminated by the Spurs in 6 games. The next 2 seasons would see the Mavs get knocked out in the first round in 2004 and in the conference semis again in 2005. The Mavs were an outstanding offensive team during this period, but it was in the playoffs that their defensive frailties constantly got exposed by teams like the Kings, the Spurs, and even the Suns. But in spite of their weaknesses, the early 2000s saw Dallas successfully transition from a struggling franchise into a consistent contender. As the playoffs came around, the third-seeded Mavs would find themselves up against the sixth-seeded Portland Trailblazers. And having been knocked out in the first round in 3 of the last 4 seasons, it was the 57-win Mavs who were facing all the doubts and skepticism.
Questions about the Dallas Mavericks. Are they too old? Are they tough enough? Will they have another early season bow out in the playoffs? Does Dirk Nowitzki get enough support from a consistent second scorer?
And in Game 1, Dirk would find that support in the form of Jason Kidd. Kidd would score 24 points in this game, while shooting 6 of 10 from three-point range. But it was still Dirk himself who would lead the way for the Mavs, scoring 18 of his 28 points in the fourth quarter, making sure that Dallas avoided any early slip-ups and took Game 1 at home. Heading into Game 2, the Mavs knew the importance of holding on to their home court advantage before the series shifted to Portland. And at the end of 3 quarters, they held a narrow 1-point advantage. But that's when Dirk would take over. He scored 14 of his 33 points in the fourth quarter, and he even brought out that Dirk fadeaway. For the second straight game, Dirk came up big in the clutch, making sure Dallas took a 2-0 lead as the series shifted to Portland. In Portland, the Blazers would take Game 3, but in Game 4, it looked like the Mavs would put this series to bed with a 23-point lead late in the third quarter. But that's when the Blazers would start to rally. Behind the play of Brandon Roy, who would score 18 of his 24 points in the fourth quarter, including this 4-point play to tie the game, Dirk and the Mavs let a 23-point lead slip away in one of the greatest collapses in NBA history. And the Blazers would go on and close this game to level the series. For Dirk and the Mavs, it looked like the ghosts of playoffs past had come back to haunt them yet again, and yet another regular season with so much promise would end in failure. The Mavs would show their resilience as they would come back from that dramatic loss in Game 4 and win Game 5 at home. And with the chance to put this series away in Game 6, it was Dirk Nowitzki once again who would step up and carry his team, scoring 14 of his 33 points in the fourth quarter, helping Dallas cast aside any first-round fears they may have had, and wrapping this series up 4 games to 2. But the most important trend being set in this series was the fact that Dirk was stepping up when the Mavs needed him the most. In crunch time, in the 4 Dallas wins, Dirk averaged 12 points per game on 55% shooting in the fourth quarter, helping the Mavs advance to the next round. But awaiting the Mavs in the conference semis were the two-time defending champions. Kobe and the Lakers were looking for a historic three-peat. And if Dirk and the Mavs had their doubters in the first round against Portland, well then in this series, nobody was giving them a chance. And it was the defending champions who would look to set the tone as the Mamba looked to strike early. Kobe was looking unstoppable as he had 30 points at the end of 3 quarters. But trailing by 7 in the fourth quarter, the Mavs would start to rally as a team.
This is exactly the position the Mavericks wanted to be in, and a chance for Dirk Nowitzki to take over.
As he did repeatedly in the first round against Portland, Dirk would take matters into his own hands in the fourth quarter, scoring 11 of his 28 points in the final period. With the Mavs up by 2, the game came down to one final possession, and there was no doubt about who would take the last shot.
Kobe for 3, and that's it. The Dallas Mavericks have defeated the Los Angeles Lakers.
The Mavs won a closely contested Game 1, but what they were about to do next in this series is something nobody saw coming. The Mavs won both games 2 and 3, and in Game 4, they would show that the Lone Star team from Dallas had plenty of depth. Jet would go off for 9 threes in this game, which was an NBA record at the time. And together with Peja, they would make 15 of their 16 three-point attempts. Peja, Jet, and JJ Barea would combine for 75 points off the bench for the Mavs. Dallas would sweep the 2-time defending champions and move on to the conference finals. Dirk was outstanding once again and was insanely efficient in his performances. He averaged 25 points per game on 57% shooting, 72% from threes, and 93% from the free throw line. But efficiency like this wasn't an overnight story. For Dirk, this was years of hard work. It was years spent perfecting his craft to turn Dirk into one of the most unstoppable scorers in NBA history.
He's such a tough guy to cover. I mean, time he's a 4, he moves like a 2. He's long. He's quicker than any 4 or 5 that can guard him. He's too big for any 2 or 3 that can guard him.
Throughout his career, Dirk Nowitzki was a massive matchup problem for his opponents. He was a player that helped revolutionize the power forward position and completely redefine what a 7-footer could be in the NBA. From the moment he entered the league, Dirk brought a skill set that just didn't exist for players of his size. He moved with the fluidity of a wing, he shot with the accuracy of a guard, and he had an unusually high release point and high arc on his jump shot, which made him nearly impossible to defend. In his early years, he had a great deal of athleticism and mobility. Dirk had real speed for a 7-footer. He could put the ball on the floor, attack closeouts, and he could even lead his team on the break in transition. This speed, paired with his deep shooting range, also meant that he was a threat from almost anywhere on the floor, and he could stretch defenses in a way that very few big men ever had. But Dirk and the Mavs had a common weakness: defense. So in order to address this, Dirk would sacrifice some of his speed and mobility while adding 20 pounds of muscle mass around the mid-2000s. And while this did give him the physicality he needed to keep up with other bigs in the league, it did mean that his offensive game now had to evolve. And this evolution made Dirk an even more efficient scorer. Even though he did remain a perimeter threat, his game now revolved heavily around his post-up and mid-range game, which was absolutely elite. And the beauty of Dirk's mid-range game wasn't just about its accuracy. It was the simplicity of the setup. Dirk had mastered the art of using up fakes and subtle contact to throw defenders off balance, all while keeping his own balance perfectly centered. And I'm guessing this is where Holger's ballet lessons truly paid off. And it was this ability to stay balanced which led to the creation and effectiveness of one of the most unguardable shots in all of basketball, Dirk's one-legged fadeaway. The setup for Dirk's fadeaway was usually done in one of two ways. He could either power into it by backing his defender down in the post, or he could face up, take a calm, deliberate step forward, and then simply fall back into the fadeaway in one seamless motion. And it may sound simple enough, but this was nearly impossible for defenders to stop. Dirk was a 7-footer fading away from the basket, and that's hard enough to challenge as it is. But if you factor in the high release and the high arc on his jumper, it became a shot that was virtually impossible to contest. And on top of all that, there was the raised right leg. The right leg acted like a natural shield between Dirk and his defender, creating extra space and separation. In addition to this, it also helped him control his center of gravity. The raised leg helped him counterbalance the backward lean of his upper body, allowing him to stay balanced even when shooting off of one leg. Dirk's fadeaway wasn't just a move, it was a repeatable mechanical sequence, allowing Dirk to generate the same timing, same angle, and same release point every single time. It became a move that both Dirk and the Mavs could turn to in the most critical of moments. Having swept aside the two-time defending champions, the Mavs looked ready to roll in the conference finals. But waiting for them was the future of the league. An OKC team led by 3 future MVPs and the reigning two-time scoring champion. It was the new guard versus the old. It was Kevin Durant versus Dirk. In Game 1, KD would show why he was the next megastar in the NBA, going off for 40 points in the series opener. But what the Thunder didn't realize was that Dirk was about to unleash one of the greatest playoff performances of his life. Dirk would hit the Thunder with a little bit of everything on his way to a 48-point performance. And he did it with some ridiculous efficiency, shooting 80% from the floor and hitting all 24 of his free throw attempts, as the Mavs would take Game 1. The two teams split Games 2 and 3. In Game 4, with the threat of going down 3-1 in this series, the Thunder came out like a team who knew their entire season was on the line. KD and Russell Westbrook took complete control of the game, and the Thunder had the game wrapped up with a 15-point lead and just 5 minutes to go. But then, Dirk happened. Dirk would go on an absolute tear, scoring 11 of his 40 points in the final 3.5 minutes of the game. Yet again in this playoff run, Dirk was delivering in crunch time, and the Thunder were absolutely stunned.
What Dirk's doing is legendary stuff. This is a joke how good this man is.
The Mavs did the impossible and forced overtime, and in overtime they would deliver one final blow to finish the game off and take a 3-1 lead in this series. With a commanding 3-1 lead, the Mavs returned home for Game 5 to try and close out this series. And Dirk would once again be outstanding, leading from the front, scoring 26 points in this game. And he would get help from Shawn Marion. Together, the two of them would combine for 23 points in the fourth quarter. But the game stayed tight, and with just over a minute left, Dirk delivered one final dagger, the shot that effectively sealed the series. The Mavs brushed aside the Thunder and took the series in just 5 games. For just the second time in franchise history, the Mavs were crowned Western Conference champions. The trophy was raised and the entire arena was celebrating. But Dirk, his reaction was different. Just moments after the ceremony, he quietly slipped away, heading straight back to the locker room. For Dirk, this wasn't the finish line. This was never the goal. A conference title meant nothing to a man who'd come too far, been doubted too long, and carried too many scars from playoffs past. Dirk was already bracing himself for the next challenge, and that challenge came in the form of the biggest story of the season, Miami's Big Three. LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh had teamed up not just to win this season, but to dominate the next decade of the NBA. And this was a challenge that Dirk had waited for 5 long years. The mid-2000s saw Dirk reach the absolute peak of his powers. During the 2005-2006 regular season, he not only led Dallas to a 60-win campaign, but also posted the best scoring numbers of his career, averaging 26.6 points per game. That same year, Dirk would also go on to become the first 7-footer in NBA history to win the three-point shootout. The Mavs looked poised for a deep playoff run, and when the postseason came around, Dirk would take his game to another level, averaging 31 points per game in the opening round against Memphis, and also hitting a clutch 3 in Game 3 to force overtime.
Nowitzki has it, fires a three. Wow! Nowitzki hits a three to tie the game.
The Mavs swept aside the Grizzlies, setting up a showdown with Tim Duncan and the Spurs. This would turn out to be an epic 7-game series, which will forever be remembered as one of the greatest duels between two of the best power forwards to ever play the game. But in the deciding Game 7, it was Dirk that emerged victorious, scoring 37 points and delivering a crucial 3-point play to force overtime. Dirk was outstanding throughout this series, averaging 27 points and 13 rebounds per game. The series also marked the first time in 3 attempts that Dirk and the Mavs managed to beat Duncan and the Spurs in the playoffs. Then in the Western Conference Finals against the Suns, Dirk continued his incredible run, pouring in a career playoff-high 50 points in Game 5 of the series. The Mavs would put away the Suns in 6 games. Dirk was playing the best basketball of his life, and the Mavericks were headed to the NBA Finals for the first time in franchise history. In the finals, Dirk and the Mavs faced Dwayne Wade, Shaq, and the Miami Heat. And it was Dallas that jumped out to an early advantage, winning the first 2 games at home. And in Game 3, they looked poised to put Miami on the brink, holding a 13-point lead late in the third quarter. But that's when everything changed. Dwayne Wade took over this series. From Games 3 through 6, Wade averaged an incredible 39 points per game, completely flipping the series on its head as Miami stormed back to win 4 straight and capture their first championship in franchise history. But the victory didn't come without controversy. As brilliant as Wade was, the Mavs felt the whistle consistently tilted in Miami's favor, especially in crucial moments. Wade averaged 16 free throw attempts per game in this series, including an astounding 25 trips to the line in Game 5 alone. Meanwhile, for the Mavs, Dirk was phenomenal in this playoff run, but when it mattered most, he fell short. He shot just 39% from the field and just 25% from the threes over the 6 games. And as soon as the series ended, the questions about Dirk surfaced. For him, this wasn't just a loss. This wasn't just a defeat. This was a major blow to his legacy. And to add insult to injury, among those questioning Dirk was Dwayne Wade. Wade publicly called out Dirk's performance in the finals, saying he's the reason they lost the championship, because he wasn't the leader he was supposed to be in the closing moments. The following season, Dirk and the Mavs would come back stronger than ever. The Mavs would win a franchise record 67 games in this season, and Dirk would have another exceptional year, becoming just the 5th player in NBA history to be part of the 50-40-90 club. But in the playoffs, all their hard work would come undone, as the top-seeded Mavs were eliminated by the 8-seeded We Believe Warriors. And to make things worse, in the final game of the series, Dirk scored just 8 points, shooting 2 for 13 from the floor. And then, what should have been a moment of triumph became one of the most uncomfortable scenes of Dirk's career. Just 2 weeks after being embarrassed in the playoffs, Dirk had to come out and accept the MVP trophy. But if Dirk and the Mavs thought that they'd hit rock bottom, what was about to come next was nothing short of a nightmare. Dallas would get eliminated in round 1 again in 2008, and then in round 2 in 2009, and once again in the opening round in 2010. The Mavs managed to win just 1 playoff series in 4 years since making the NBA Finals, and many believe that their window, along with Dirk's, was already closed. Legacies. They're built in the moments that define you. And what you do in those moments decides whether your career will be remembered for what it was or for what it never became. Because nothing you accomplish would truly matter unless you've proven yourself as a leader. And that's a heavy burden to carry. Because as the leader of your team, every missed shot, every blown lead, every season that ends too early, that's on your shoulders. These are your losses. For Dirk, the 2011 NBA Finals wasn't just about the championship. This was his last chance to rewrite his legacy. Their opponents were the team that had everybody's attention from the first day of this season. King James and his crew weren't just expected to reach the finals, they were expected to rule over the entire league. And in the playoffs, they were showing that the hype was real. Miami dominated the East, losing just 3 games on their way to the NBA Finals. To get to their goal, Dirk and the Mavs would have to beat 3 of the biggest stars in the league. And it was a matchup between a group of superstars that came together to make winning easier, and one superstar who insisted on winning right where he started. In Game 1, Dallas would find out why so many thought that these finals were nothing more than a formality. And it was a collective effort from Miami's Big Three. Wade, Bosh, and LeBron would dominate the Mavs throughout this game. Dallas simply did not have any answers, and Miami played with the kind of confidence that showed that they believed this series was theirs for the taking. In Game 2, the Mavs had to try and bounce back. And to add to their concerns, Dirk was playing this game with a torn tendon in his finger. The Mavs would start strong, but it wouldn't be long before Miami's Big Three would once again change gears, just as they did in Game 1. Dwayne Wade would take over, scoring 21 of his 36 points in the first half, and he would get plenty of help from both Chris Bosh and, of course, King James himself. The Heat were absolutely dominating the Mavs, and they were showing it on their home court. They were letting the Mavs know that they were in firm control of this game and this series. Miami were up by 15 with just over 7 minutes left in the game. But watching the Heat celebrate was exactly what the Mavs needed to wake up. The Mavs would come storming back behind Jet and Dirk, who would combine for 17 points in the fourth quarter as the Mavs went on a 20-2 run. And with this 3, Dirk would put the Mavs up by 3 with just 26 seconds left in the game. With the next possession, a defensive lapse from Jason Terry himself would leave Mario Chalmers open for a game-tying 3. But with one last chance to win this game, there was no doubt who the Mavs would turn to.
Nowitzki drives, goes underneath, lefty layup, banks it in with 3.6 remaining. Miami out of timeouts, trailing by 2. James back to Wade. Wade puts it up for the win. Off the mark, and Dallas has tied the finals.
In spite of the torn tendon, Dirk came up huge in crunch time yet again for the Mavs in this playoff run. Having lost home court advantage in Game 2, the Heat were desperate to get it back. And it was once again Dwayne Wade who was leading the way with 29 points. Just like in Game 2, the Heat had taken control with a 13-point advantage in the third quarter. But as we saw time and again throughout this playoff run, Dirk would lead a ferocious comeback from Dallas. He would score 15 of his 34 points in the fourth quarter, including 12 straight for the Mavs, to tie the game at 86. Then in the closing moments of this game, LeBron would manage to find a wide-open Chris Bosh, who would hit this jumper to put the Heat up by 2 with just 39 seconds left in the game. The Mavs would, of course, yet again turn to Dirk. But for once in this playoff run, Dirk was unable to hit that crucial shot for the Mavs, and the Heat would take a 2-1 lead in this series. With the possibility of going down 3-1 in this series, the Mavs knew Game 4 was a must-win situation for them. But before the game even tipped off, the Mavs were hit with a major setback. Dirk was battling the flu, and was visibly struggling. And as the game got underway, it was clear that he wasn't himself. For the Mavs, the timing could not have been worse. A Miami win here meant that the series was as good as over. But with their leader down, it was time for the rest of the Mavs to step up. Tyson Chandler, Jason Terry, and the rest of the supporting cast would make sure that Dallas stayed in touching distance. But in the third quarter, Dwayne Wade would take over, scoring 12 of his 32 points in the quarter, and giving Miami a 9-point lead with just 10 minutes left in the game. With the entire season hanging in balance, we were about to find out just how much Dirk had left in the tank. Running on fumes, Dirk somehow dug deep and found it in him to produce one more fourth quarter rally. He scored 10 points in the final period and had the ball in his hand with 29 seconds left on the clock. Dirk would hit this layup and put the Mavs up by 3. The Heat had the ball for the final possession, but Dwayne Wade would stumble, tipping the ball to Mike Miller, whose 3 would miss badly as time expired. Against all odds, through exhaustion and illness, Dirk and the Mavs had somehow found a way. In the most difficult of circumstances, they completed the comeback and leveled this series at 2 games apiece. Before Game 5 even tipped off, the Heat gave Dallas a little extra motivation. Coming off an 8-point performance in Game 4, LeBron James, alongside Dwayne Wade, was caught on camera mocking Dirk, smirking, fake coughing, and implying that Dirk was faking his illness. And that was all the incentive that Dallas needed. Dallas would shut down any challenge that Miami would throw at them in this game, and Dirk showed exactly why you do not mock one of the all-time greats of this game, scoring 29 points and giving Dallas a chance to win their first ever NBA championship in Game 6. The stage was set. For Dirk and the Mavs, this was a chance to close out this series, and for Miami, it was a fight for survival. But early on, it seemed the occasion was getting to Dirk. Dirk couldn't buy a basket in this game. He scored just 3 points in the entire first half on 1 for 12 shooting. And while Dirk struggled, it seemed LeBron might finally come unglued in this series, scoring 9 points in the first quarter alone. For the Mavs, it was the man who was by Dirk's side through so many highs and lows that would step up in this critical game. Jason Terry would score 19 first half points. Jet was carrying the team on his back, making sure the Mavs would not let this game slip away. But in the second half, it was time for Dirk to take over. Dirk came out in the second half with one purpose on his mind: to finish this game off. And it had to be Dirk, who took over yet another crucial game in this unbelievable playoff run by the Mavs. Dirk would score 18 second half points and would deliver one last knockout punch to finish off the Heat.
And that should do it for the Dallas Mavericks.
Dirk and the Mavs finally made it. This was 13 years of heartbreak, 13 years of pain, 13 years of being told that he wasn't good enough, and it was finally in the past. And while the rest of the Mavs celebrated on the floor, Dirk quietly stepped away, heading back to the locker room, finally allowing himself a moment to process what this truly meant. He would no longer be defined by the doubts, the failures, or the questions. As he came back out to celebrate with his teammates, all that mattered was Dirk Nowitzki was now and forever an NBA champion. Looking back, the years that followed Dallas' championship run felt like one big celebration of Dirk's career. One milestone fell after the other. He became the highest-scoring foreign-born player in NBA history, and in 2017, just the 5th player ever to reach 30,000 career points. A feat that Dirk got to achieve in front of his mentor, Holger. Dirk would eventually retire in 2019, bringing an end to 21 seasons in the NBA. every single one of them spent with one franchise. Dirk Nowitzki became a symbol of persistence, of loyalty, of believing in the long road. And in the end, that 20-year-old kid from Würzburg, Germany, had his name etched forever among the game's absolute elite.